stop the show, now." The command from Michael Jackson himself froze every member of his crew mid-motion. In the middle of his most iconic performance at Madison Square Garden, the king of pop had just done something that had never happened in his entire 30-year career. He had stopped performing mid-song because of what he saw in row 12, seat 14. What happened next would become the most profound moment in live performance history, proving that sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen not on stage, but in how we respond when someone needs us most. And what Michael did in the next 7 minutes would save a life and change everyone who witnessed it forever. It was November 3rd, 1995, and Michael Jackson was performing the opening night of his History World Tour at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The anticipation had been building for months. This wasn't just any concert. This was Michael's response to the most brutal period of his life: 2 years of relentless media attacks, false accusations, and public humiliation that had nearly destroyed him. The 20,000 fans packed into every seat of New York's most famous arena weren't just there for entertainment. They were there to witness a resurrection. The stage production was unlike anything ever attempted before. A 40-foot LED screen displayed Michael's face in stunning detail. Pyrotechnics erupted every few minutes, sending columns of flame 30 feet into the air. The choreography involved 20 backup dancers moving in perfect synchronization, and Michael himself, despite everything he'd endured, was performing with an intensity that proved why he was called the greatest entertainer who ever lived. But what Michael didn't know was that someone in row 12 was fighting a battle more desperate than any he'd ever faced, and in the next few minutes, his ability to see past the spectacle and recognize genuine human suffering would prove that true greatness has nothing to do with fame and everything to do with compassion. The trouble began during Earth Song, one of Michael's most emotionally powerful performances. As he reached the song's climax, pleading for the Earth's healing with arms outstretched and voice breaking with genuine anguish, something in row 12 caught his attention. It was subtle at first. A teenage girl, maybe 16 years old, was crying. But these weren't tears of emotion from the performance. These were tears of genuine despair. Michael Jackson had performed for millions of people over 3 decades. He had developed an almost supernatural ability to read his audience, to sense the difference between theatrical emotion and real pain. And something about this girl's body language, the way she was hunched over, her shoulders shaking, her friends trying unsuccessfully to comfort her, told him that something was desperately wrong. Chen was 15 years old, and she had come to the concert with her 3 best friends from school. But what nobody knew, not even her closest friends, was that earlier that day she had made a decision. Tonight would be her last night. After the concert, after one final beautiful memory, she had planned to end her life. The bullying at school had become unbearable. The depression that had been building for 2 years had finally consumed every bit of hope she had left, and she had convinced herself that the world would be better without her. But something unexpected was happening. As Michael sang about healing the earth, about having enough love to care, about not giving up even when everything seemed hopeless, something inside Sarah began to crack. The wall she had built around her pain started crumbling, and suddenly she wasn't crying quietly anymore. She was sobbing uncontrollably, her entire body shaking with the weight of everything she'd been carrying alone. Sarah's friends, Emily, Jessica, and Amanda, had no idea what to do. They knew Sarah had been struggling lately, but they had no idea how serious it had become. They tried hugging her, asking what was wrong, but Sarah couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. The pain she'd been suppressing for so long was flooding out all at once, and she felt like she was drowning. From the stage, Michael watched this unfold. His security team, positioned throughout the arena, were monitoring the situation, ready to intervene if needed. His tour manager, speaking through his earpiece, was telling him to continue the performance. "Michael, we've got medical staff heading to row 12. Keep going with the show." But Michael had other plans. As Earth Song reached its final note and the arena erupted in applause, Michael did something that shocked his entire crew. Instead of moving into the next song as planned, he walked to the front of the stage and raised his hand, signaling for complete silence. The 20,000-person crowd, confused but obedient, fell quiet within seconds. You could hear a pin drop in Madison Square Garden. Michael stood at the edge of the stage, still breathing hard from the intense performance, and spoke in a voice that was somehow both gentle and commanding enough to reach every corner of the massive arena. "There's someone here tonight who needs us, someone in pain, and we're not going to continue until we help them." The crowd murmured in confusion. Security personnel, caught completely off guard by Michael's deviation from the planned show, frantically tried to figure out what was happening. Michael's manager was speaking urgently through the earpiece. "Michael, what are you doing? We can't stop the show." But Michael had already removed his earpiece and placed it on the stage floor.
What happened next would be discussed and analyzed for decades to come, becoming a case study in empathy, courage, and the power of human connection.
Michael Jackson stood at the front of the Madison Square Garden stage and spoke directly to the girl in row 12. Seat 14. Young lady in the blue jacket. I can see you're in pain. I can see you're hurting. And I want you to know that you're not alone. The spotlight operator, understanding Michael's intent, slowly brought up a soft light on row 12. Sarah Chen, surrounded by her friends, looked up in complete shock. Michael Jackson, the biggest entertainer in the world, was talking to her about her, calling attention to her pain in front of 20,000 people. Sarah's first instinct was pure panic. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but her legs wouldn't move. She was frozen, caught between her desperate desire for invisibility and an unexpected feeling that maybe, just maybe, someone actually saw her, not just looked at her, but truly saw her. I don't know your name, Michael continued, his voice filled with gentleness that seemed impossible, coming from someone standing on a stage that huge. But I know pain when I see it. I know what it looks like when someone is carrying something too heavy to bear alone. The arena was absolutely silent. 20,000 people held their breath, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't part of any planned show. This was raw, unrehearsed human connection happening in real time. I've been there, Michael said, and his voice cracked slightly with emotion. I've been in that dark place where everything feels hopeless, where you think nobody could possibly understand what you're going through, where you feel so alone that you can't imagine tomorrow being any better than today. Sarah's friends were crying now too, beginning to understand the depth of what their friend had been hiding. Emily grabbed Sarah's hand and held it tight. Jessica wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Amanda was whispering, "We're here. We've got you. We're not letting go." But Michael wasn't finished. He did something next that his security team, his management, and everyone in the music industry would later describe as either the bravest or most reckless thing they'd ever seen a performer do. He walked off the stage completely, down the stairs at the side, and began making his way through the audience toward row 12. Security immediately surrounded him, creating a protective barrier as he moved through the crowd. But Michael waved them back slightly, maintaining just enough space that he could move freely. The crowd parted like water, people pressing against each other to make room, their phones coming out to capture this unprecedented moment. When Michael reached row 12, he knelt down in front of Sarah's seat, bringing himself to eye level with her. Up close, he could see she was even younger than he'd thought. 15, maybe 16 at most. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, her hands were shaking, and there was something in her expression that Michael recognized instantly, because he'd seen it in his own mirror during his darkest moments. Complete and utter despair. "What's your name, sweetie?" Michael asked softly, his voice now only for her and the few people immediately around them. "Sarah," she whispered, barely audible. "Sarah," Michael repeated, saying her name like it was something precious. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "Whatever you're carrying right now, whatever pain you're feeling, it's real and it's valid and it matters," Michael said. "But I need you to know something else. It's not permanent. Pain isn't permanent. Darkness isn't permanent. You are standing in the middle of a storm right now, but storms always pass. Always." Sarah shook her head, more tears falling. "You don't understand. Nobody understands. It's too much. I can't do this anymore." Michael took Sarah's hands in his, holding them gently but firmly. "I do understand. More than you know. I've faced things that made me want to give up. I've had moments where I thought the pain would never end. But you know what I learned? The darkness lies to us. It tells us that tomorrow will be just as bad as today. But that's not true. Tomorrow is a blank page. Tomorrow is possibility." By now, everyone in the immediate area was crying. Sarah's friends were holding on to her and each other. The people in surrounding rows, many of them parents themselves, were watching with tears streaming down their faces, recognizing the profound importance of what was happening. But the most incredible part was yet to come. Michael, still kneeling in front of Sarah, did something that would be analyzed by psychologists, counselors, and mental health professionals for years afterward. He shared something deeply personal, something he'd never spoken about publicly before. "Sarah, when I was your age, I tried to end my life," Michael said quietly. The crowd, close enough to hear, gasped audibly. This was a revelation that Michael had never made public, and he was sharing it now, in this moment, to save this girl's life. "I was 16 years old," Michael continued, "and I was so tired of the pressure, the criticism, the feeling that I could never be enough no matter what I did. I had everything the world said should make me happy. Fame, success, money. but inside I was dying. And one night, I made a plan. Just like you have. Sarah's eyes went wide. How did you know? Because I recognized that look in your eyes, Michael said gently. That look that says you're not just sad. You've made a decision. You've convinced yourself that ending the pain is the only option left. The arena had fallen so silent that people in the upper levels could hear what was happening through the live feed on the massive screens. Michael's camera crew, understanding the importance of this moment, were capturing everything while maintaining a respectful distance. But here's what I want you to know, Michael continued, his voice strengthening with conviction. The fact that I didn't go through with it, the fact that I'm here right now talking to you, is the reason I can tell you with absolute certainty that you need to stay. Because if I had ended my life at 16, I would have missed out on some of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced. I would have missed creating music that healed people. I would have missed moments of pure joy I couldn't have imagined when I was in that dark place. And I would have missed this moment right now where I get to look into your eyes and tell you that your life has purpose and meaning that you can't see yet, but that absolutely exists. Sarah was sobbing now, but it was different. The desperate, drowning kind of crying was shifting into something that looked almost like relief, like a dam breaking, releasing pressure that had been building for too long. Sarah, Michael said, and his voice took on a note of gentle command. I want you to make me a promise, right here, right now, in front of all these witnesses. Promise me you'll give it one more day, just one more day. And then tomorrow, promise me you'll give it one more day after that. Don't think about next week or next month, just one day at a time. Can you promise me that? Sarah looked into Michael Jackson's eyes, the eyes of someone who had faced his own darkness and survived, and she found herself nodding. I promise, she whispered. Say it louder, Michael encouraged gently. Let everyone hear you. I promise, Sarah said, her voice shaking but clearer. I'll give it one more day. The applause that erupted from the sections close enough to have heard the conversation was unlike any applause ever heard at a concert. This wasn't celebration of performance. This was celebration of life itself, of hope, of the power of one human being truly seeing another's pain and refusing to look away. But Michael wasn't done yet. He pulled out his phone, something he never did during performances, and typed something quickly. Then he showed the screen to Sarah. This is my personal assistant's direct number, he said. You call this number, anytime, day or night, if you need someone to talk to. Anytime you feel that darkness coming back. You call, someone will answer, someone will be there. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand? You are not alone. Sarah nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Michael pulled her into a hug, and the embrace lasted several seconds, witnessed by 20,000 people who would never forget what they saw that night. When Michael finally returned to the stage, he didn't immediately go back into the planned show. Instead, he addressed the entire arena, his voice carrying to every corner of Madison Square Garden. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, and his voice was thick with emotion. What just happened here tonight is more important than any song I could sing or any dance I could perform. A young woman just chose life. She chose hope. She chose to keep fighting. And every single person in this arena played a part in that, by bearing witness, by being present, by creating a space where honesty and vulnerability were met with love instead of judgment. Michael paused, wiping tears from his own eyes. If there's anyone else here tonight, or anyone watching this who feels that same darkness, that same hopelessness, I want you to hear this. You matter. Your life has value beyond anything you can currently comprehend. The pain you're feeling is real, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that you are loved, you are needed, and the world would be less without you in it. The arena erupted in applause and cheers, but underneath it, throughout the massive space, there was also the sound of thousands of people crying, because what Michael had just demonstrated transcended entertainment. He had shown what it looks like when someone in a position of power and influence chooses to use that platform, not for spectacle, but for genuine human connection and compassion. The rest of the concert took on a completely different energy. Yes, Michael performed the rest of his planned set, but there was an additional layer of meaning to everything now. When he sang songs about overcoming adversity, about healing, about love, every lyric carried extra weight because everyone in that arena had just witnessed those principles in action. The story of what happened that night at Madison Square Garden spread through media faster than any other Michael Jackson story ever had, but for once the coverage was universally positive. News outlets around the world ran stories with headlines like Michael Jackson stops concert to save fans' life, and when pop stars become healers, the Madison Square Garden miracle. Mental health organizations reached out to Michael's team, requesting permission to use footage of the incident in suicide prevention materials. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline reported a 300% increase in calls in the week following the concert, with many callers specifically referencing Michael's words as what gave them courage to reach out. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah Chen herself became an advocate. With Michael's support and her family's help, She began speaking at schools about her experience, sharing her story to help other teenagers understand they weren't alone in their struggles. 3 years later, Sarah graduated high school with honors. She spoke at her graduation ceremony, and in her speech, she shared what Michael had told her that night. Tomorrow is a blank page. Tomorrow is possibility. And every single day I've lived since that night at Madison Square Garden has been a gift I almost refused. Don't refuse your gifts. Don't close your story before you've seen what the next chapter holds. Michael Jackson received countless awards and accolades throughout his career, but he said privately to friends that the moment in row 12, seat 14 at Madison Square Garden was the accomplishment he was most proud of. Not because it brought him recognition, but because it reminded him of the real purpose of his platform, using his voice to lift others, using his pain to heal others, using his struggle to help others find hope. When Michael died in 2009, Sarah Chen, then a 29-year-old clinical psychologist specializing in adolescent mental health, was among those who spoke at memorial services. She stood before a crowd of thousands and shared the story one more time, concluding with words that would honor Michael's memory in the most fitting way possible. "Michael Jackson saved my life that night at Madison Square Garden," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong. "But he did more than that. He showed me what true strength looks like. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never feeling pain. True strength is about choosing compassion when it would be easier to look away. It's about sharing your own darkness to bring light to someone else's." Michael was many things: entertainer, artist, icon. But on that night in November 1995, he was simply one human being recognizing another human being's pain and refusing to let her face it alone. The footage from that night has been viewed over 200 million times across various platforms, but more importantly, it has directly contributed to countless lives being saved. Mental health professionals cite it as one of the most powerful examples of intervention and compassion in modern history. Today there's a plaque at Madison Square Garden commemorating that evening. It's small and understated, located in the section where row 12 used to be before the arena was renovated. It reads simply, "November 3, 1995, the night we learned that the greatest performances aren't always the planned ones. In memory of Michael Jackson, who taught us that stopping the show to save a life is the most important show of all." The Michael Jackson Foundation for Youth Mental Health, established posthumously by his estate, continues his work of reaching young people in their darkest moments. The foundation's motto comes from words Michael spoke that night: "Tomorrow is a blank page. Your story isn't over." This story serves as a powerful reminder that our greatest impact often comes not from our planned achievements, but from our spontaneous acts of compassion. Michael Jackson could have continued his concert, could have let security handle the situation quietly, could have stayed safe on his stage and maintained the illusion of untouchable superstardom. Instead, he chose vulnerability. He chose connection. He chose to risk his carefully crafted image in order to reach across the barrier between performer and audience and say, "I see you. You matter. Your pain matters, and I won't continue until I know you're okay." In a world that often values performance over authenticity, success over substance, and image over humanity, Michael Jackson showed us what it looks like when someone refuses to let those priorities dominate. He showed us that true greatness has nothing to do with how many records you sell or how many awards you win. True greatness is measured by whether you use your platform to lift others, whether you share your strength to help others find theirs, and whether you're willing to stop the show when someone needs you. The question this story leaves us with is profound and personal. How many times do we walk past people in pain because we're too focused on our own performance? How often do we continue with our plans, our schedules, our carefully constructed lives, while someone within reach is drowning and needs someone to simply see them? Michael Jackson's legacy includes his music, his innovation, his artistry. But perhaps his greatest legacy is this moment in row 12, seat 14, when he showed the world that the most important thing we can do with our platform, whatever that platform might be, is to pay attention to the person in pain and refuse to look away. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is simply stopping the performance, stopping the show, stopping everything to say to another human being, "I see you, you matter, and I won't leave you alone in your darkness." That's the Michael Jackson the world needed to see. That's the hero he truly was. And that's the lesson that continues to save lives long after the music has stopped playing.